The stadium was already wrapped in tension long before the cameras caught it. The kind of tension that hangs in the air when a season is slipping away, and everyone on the sideline can feel it. Cleveland came into the game battered, bruised, and desperate. But no one expected the moment that would hijack the entire NFL news cycle. One missed throw, one frustrated receiver, and suddenly the Browns found themselves at the center of a storm that made their 26-8 loss feel like the least important part of the day. It all began with a deep shot that had a chance to flip the entire afternoon. Shėduer Sanders stepped into the throw, saw Judy breaking free, and launched what should have been the spark this offense needed. Instead, the ball drifted just long, just enough to let the moment slip through their fingers. Judy came off the field shaking his head, and it wasn't a quiet frustration. It was boiling, sharp, years in the making frustration, the kind that doesn't stay inside. And that was the moment every Browns fan felt their stomach drop. Because even before Judy opened his mouth, the cameras were already on him. They felt something coming. And then it happened. A tablet in hand, Judy started clapping his hands aggressively, pointing, emphasizing, demanding answers. Their body language said everything. Two players living in completely different emotional worlds colliding on live television. Within seconds, it became the viral moment of the season. Social media erupted. Fans called Judy a distraction. Analysts questioned Sanders' readiness. Memes flooded in. It felt like everyone had chosen a side before the players even left the sideline. But what no one realized in that moment was that this confrontation wasn't random. It wasn't sudden. It was the eruption of weeks of buried frustration. Frustration from a receiver fighting to prove he's still elite, and a rookie quarterback fighting to prove he belongs. And while the explosion looked ugly, the truth was far more complicated. Because Judy wasn't just upset about an overthrow. He was upset about timing, trust, and chemistry, things the Browns offense hasn't had all year. He knew he had separation. He knew it was a touchdown waiting to happen. And when a receiver feels that slip away, especially in a season filled with disappointment, it hits harder than anyone watching from home could understand. But before the narrative could settle, former players jumped in. Steve Smith, who already had history with Judy, resurfaced in clips across social media calling him a jag, a guy who isn't living up to first-round expectations. Fans piled on. Some even accused Judy of sabotaging the offense, of being an agent of destruction, echoing wild rumors floating on fan pages. It didn't matter if any of it was true. Perception had already drawn blood. And at the same time, Sanders wasn't spared either. Analysts broke down the film, pointing out his late reads, his inconsistent footwork, his hesitation that turned open throws into broken opportunities. They weren't attacking his talent. They were attacking the timing he didn't have time to develop. A rookie thrust into chaos, operating behind a line missing starters, in an offense that changed quarterbacks 4 times this year. And somehow, the expectation was perfection. The irony was impossible to ignore. Gabriel checking down were now furious that Sanders wasn't delivering instant chemistry with a receiver he'd barely practiced with. The reality. Sanders didn't get first-team reps until he became the starter. Judy spent months adjusting to the tendencies of 3 completely different quarterbacks. This wasn't frustration between enemies. This was frustration between strangers, forced into a relationship overnight. But none of that mattered when the clip went viral. People saw shouting, finger-pointing, anger, and assumed division. What they didn't see was the human side of the moment. They didn't see the weight Judy was carrying from a season that had fallen far below his standards. They didn't see the pressure crushing Sanders as he tried to lead a battered offense out of survival mode. They didn't see 2 competitors who desperately wanted something to finally go right. What the world saw was a meltdown. What it really was a breaking point. But breaking points don't always break teams. Sometimes they expose what's been silently suffocating beneath the surface. And for the Browns, that suffocation was a lack of trust. Not because someone didn't care, but because no one had time to build it. Still, nothing prepared Cleveland for the response that followed. Analysts tore into the play. One pointed out that Sanders hesitated on the first read. Another said Judy would have walked into the end zone if the ball came out earlier. Others argued that Judy had no right to react the way he did, that he hadn't earned that emotional authority. Accusations flew from every direction. But the defining moment wasn't the argument. It was how both men responded afterward. Judy, speaking to reporters, surprised everyone. He didn't double down. He didn't blame Sanders. He didn't deflect. Instead, he admitted, calmly, honestly, that he should have handled it differently. He said he should have talked to Sanders off camera. He said emotions took over. He said football is emotional, messy, real. Most importantly, he said one thing that cut through all the noise. Me and Shėduer are good. No theatrics, no excuses, just clarity. And then came Sanders' turn. A rookie making only his second NFL start, standing in front of cameras, asking him about the biggest controversy of the week. And instead of being flustered or defensive, Sanders delivered one of the most composed answers this organization has heard in years. He didn't blame Judy. He didn't dodge responsibility. He talked about trust. He talked about timing. He talked about how detailed the connection between quarterback and receiver truly is, how one glance or one step can change everything. And he talked about how this season is anything but traditional. No off-season reps, no early chemistry. Just two players thrown together in the fire and asked to make it work instantly. The maturity in his voice caught even his critics off guard. This wasn't a rookie feeling overwhelmed. This was a rookie understanding the assignment, understanding the challenge, understanding Judy's emotions, and refusing to let one moment define the partnership they're trying to build. And just like that, the narrative shifted. The confrontation that looked like the beginning of a feud was actually the beginning of something Cleveland has been begging for all season: accountability, emotion, and players who actually care. And once the dust settled, the people inside the building saw it for what it truly was. Not a fracture, but a spark. Even Kevin Stefanski, a coach who usually treats drama like radioactive material, didn't flinch when reporters asked him about it. He didn't panic. He didn't hint at discipline. He didn't talk about division. Instead, he delivered the most telling line of the week. When you're a family, you can have disagreements. Sometimes everyone sees them. Sometimes they happen behind closed doors. That wasn't coach speak. That was a man who understood exactly what happened on that tablet. It wasn't a mutiny. It wasn't disrespect. It was passion. It was two players demanding more from each other, from themselves, and from an offense that has spent the entire season suffocating under its own inconsistencies. Stefanski wasn't worried, and he shouldn't be. Because teams with no sideline arguments are teams that have already quit. The Browns haven't quit, not even close. But the most important part of this entire saga didn't unfold under the bright stadium lights or in front of millions of viewers. It happened quietly, behind the scenes, as Sanders explained the real root of the problem: time. Time to build trust. Time to read body language. Time to understand rhythm. Time to understand how a receiver accelerates at the top of a route, how he leans into a comeback, how he adjusts when the ball is late. Judy had years of that with other quarterbacks. Sanders had days. Chemistry in football isn't a switch. It's muscle memory, repetition, instinct. Thousands of tiny details learned through thousands of reps. Sanders wasn't making excuses. He was describing reality. Judy wasn't attacking his quarterback. He was expressing the frustration of a once elite receiver trying to navigate a season where nothing feels familiar. They weren't enemies. They were two players stuck inside a storm neither created. And that's exactly why what happened next matters even more. Judy, a player often labeled emotional or volatile, didn't dodge accountability. He didn't hide behind PR. He didn't act like a victim. He said plainly that he would have handled it differently and that he and Sanders talked it out. He didn't pretend the moment wasn't heated. He simply refused to let it define their relationship. That level of honesty is rare in this league. It showed growth. It showed maturity. It showed that Judy wants this partnership to work. Sanders matched that energy. He didn't lecture Judy. He didn't defend himself. He didn't minimize the frustration. He spoke about trust like a veteran quarterback, not a rookie. He talked about timing with the calmness of someone who fully understands the weight on his shoulders. And then he said something that slipped past most headlines, but might be the most important sentence of his entire press conference. This team is not going to be a microwave thing. In a league addicted to instant gratification, he rejected the idea that chemistry, confidence, and consistency can magically appear overnight. The Browns have spent years trying to skip the process, trying to buy instant offense, instant stability, instant leadership. Sanders is refusing to repeat that mistake. He's choosing the long road, the right road. And here's where everything becomes interesting. When you look at Sanders' comments, Judy's comments, Stefanski's comments, and the reaction inside the locker room, no one seems scared. No one seems shaken. No one seems divided. They seem connected. Not perfectly, not smoothly, but genuinely connected in a way this offense hasn't been in a long time. And maybe that's why this moment, this fiery, uncomfortable, very public confrontation, might become the turning point of the entire season. Think about every great quarterback-receiver duo the league has seen.